Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, March 1st, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be mild today, with a high of 68.3 degrees and a low of 54.0. Coming up on today's show, we'll examine Europe's increasing support for Ukraine as Trump reduces American involvement. We'll also look at California's ambitious $1.5 billion plan to tackle wildfire prevention across the state. Plus, we'll explore a revolutionary new plug-in stove that could change the way Americans cook and potentially reshape kitchens nationwide. What makes this appliance so special? And could it be the future of home cooking? All this and more coming up on Alex's News. In a dramatic turn of events, European leaders are rallying behind Ukraine following what sources describe as a confrontational meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelensky at the White House. For more on this developing story, we're joined by our international correspondent Ethan. Ethan, what exactly happened during this Oval Office meeting?
Grace, according to reporting from the Associated Press, what was supposed to be a straightforward meeting to finalize a minerals deal between the U.S. and Ukraine last week turned into a heated confrontation. President Trump, reportedly influenced by Vice President J.D. Vance's skepticism toward Ukraine, berated President Zelensky for being disrespectful and seemingly ungrateful for U.S. assistance. The situation escalated to the point where Trump allegedly shouted at the Ukrainian leader and had Zelensky's delegation removed from the White House.
That sounds incredibly tense. Can you tell us more about this minerals deal that was supposed to be finalized?
Absolutely. As detailed by Perplexity, the agreement would have established a joint investment fund where Ukraine would contribute half of future mining revenues from its considerable mineral resources. These include rare earth elements, titanium, lithium, and uranium, as all strategically important materials. The fund was designed to support Ukraine's reconstruction while giving the U.S. access to these critical minerals. Initially, there was talk of Ukraine using these resources to repay military aid, with figures around $500 billion mentioned, but the final framework focused more on joint investment rather than direct repayment.
Why are these minerals so important in the global context?
That's a crucial question, Grace. These minerals, particularly rare earth elements, are essential components in defense technology and renewable energy systems. Currently, China dominates the global supply chain for many of these materials. According to Perplexity's analysis, this deal would have helped reduce Western dependence on China for these critical resources. With the deal's cancellation, the U.S. remains vulnerable to potential supply chain disruptions in this sector.
How have European leaders responded to this diplomatic incident?
European leaders have quickly moved to reaffirm their support for Ukraine. According to Oregon Live, a major summit is scheduled in London, hosted by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, to discuss security and action regarding Ukraine. The Associated Press reports that emergency summits are being held across Europe, with leaders expressing solidarity with Ukraine. President Zelensky has publicly thanked European leaders on social media platform X for their continued support.
Are there any specific aid commitments coming from Europe?
Yes, there are substantial commitments. According to Perplexity, the European Union is planning a new military aid package that includes at least 1.5 million rounds of large-caliber artillery ammunition, air defense systems, missiles, and drones. This package is expected to be finalized at an extraordinary European summit on March 6th, just 5 days from now. Additionally, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has announced a not $3.5 billion financial assistance package, which is part of a larger, a not 50 billion inches Ukraine facility fund established by the EU.
Is European support for Ukraine unanimous?
Not entirely, Grace. As Yahoo News and Oregon Live report, there are notable exceptions. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has praised Trump's stance, and the far-right German party AfD has expressed support for Trump while criticizing weapons deliveries to Ukraine. However, the majority of European leaders, including those from Italy, Germany, and the EU Commission, have voiced strong support for Ukraine and emphasized the need for Western unity in the face of Russian aggression.
How is this affecting transatlantic relations?
This incident has highlighted a deepening rift between the U.S. and Europe on Ukraine policy. According to the Associated Press, European leaders were already concerned by Vice President Vance's recent criticisms of their democracies at the Munich Security Conference. Now we're seeing Europe potentially taking a more independent stance on security matters. Germany's likely next chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has promised to unite Europe in the face of challenges from both Russia and the United States, a statement that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive report on this developing international situation. We'll continue to follow this story as European leaders work to coordinate their response.
You're welcome, Grace. This is certainly a pivotal moment in transatlantic relations that could reshape Western security policy moving forward.
Our next story takes us to California, where state officials are now deciding how to allocate $1.5 billion in climate bond money for wildfire prevention. Joining us with more details is our reporter Chloe Thompson. Chloe, this is a significant amount of money. How did California secure these funds?
That's right, Grace. According to Cal Matters and LA Waste reporting, this $1.5 billion was approved by California voters through Proposition 4, specifically for wildfire prevention efforts. Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed spending $325 million of this funding in the upcoming fiscal year, with the remainder to be distributed over the next 5 years.
And I understand there's some debate about how exactly to allocate these funds. What are state lawmakers saying?
Yes, there's quite a bit of discussion happening. Assemblymember Steve Bennett has become a vocal advocate for a more focused strategy. According to Cal Matters, Bennett argued, "We need to be strategic about how we spend this money to maximize its impact. A comprehensive plan is essential to ensure these limited resources achieve meaningful results." The concern is about spreading resources too thinly across multiple initiatives rather than concentrating on the most effective approaches.
It sounds like there are different schools of thought on wildfire prevention. What are the main strategies being considered?
The central debate is whether to prioritize home hardening efforts or broader forest management strategies. Home hardening refers to making individual properties more resistant to fire through measures like installing ember-resistant vents and fire-resistant roofing. State Fire Marshal Daniel Berlant has defended the administration's comprehensive approach, telling Cal Matters, "We need to manage our forests and make homes more fire-resistant. These approaches work together to reduce wildfire risk."
How effective have home hardening efforts been so far?
The state currently operates a pilot program in 6 counties, providing financial assistance to homeowners for fireproofing their homes. The numbers are still modest. According to available data, the program has completed fireproofing for 17 homes with another 23 in progress. However, CL Fire research suggests homes built with hardening standards are 40% less likely to be destroyed and 32% less likely to be damaged during wildfires, which indicates the approach has significant potential.
With this new funding, are there plans to expand these programs?
Yes, the state plans to expand the home hardening program to 2 additional counties. The selection will likely follow criteria similar to those used for the initial 6 counties, focusing on wildfire risk, social vulnerability indicators like poverty levels and residents over 65, and climate data predicting future fire probability. The Newsom administration has also proposed creating a new program to help vulnerable Californians establish a 5-foot defensible space around their homes.
What kind of costs are we talking about for these home hardening measures?
The costs can vary widely. Basic measures might range from $2,000 to $15,000, while full retrofits could potentially reach $100,000. Despite these costs, data from 91,800 home inspections in California indicate that incorporating mitigation measures can reduce expected loss by 20 to 25% compared to properties without such measures. According to Lookout Santa Cruz reporting, comprehensive mitigation approaches can decrease risk by up to 74%.
Has the recent spate of wildfires in Southern California affected these funding discussions?
That's an important point, Grace. It's worth noting that Governor Newsom's budget proposal was drafted before the recent Southern California wildfires. As Lookout Santa Cruz has reported, there's growing recognition that these recent events may influence final funding decisions, potentially increasing focus on home hardening measures. The debate continues as lawmakers work to finalize allocations that will shape California's approach to wildfire prevention for years to come.
Thank you, Chloe, for that comprehensive look at California's wildfire prevention funding. This is certainly a story we'll continue to follow as those decisions are made. That's story 2 of 3 this morning. Here are some other headlines. The Kurdistan Workers' Party has declared a ceasefire in its 40-year insurgency against the Turkish state. The announcement follows a call from imprisoned PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan to disarm and disband. The ceasefire, declared on March 1st, states that PKK forces will not engage in armed action unless attacked. This development comes amid political pressure from Devlet Bahçeli, a coalition partner of President Erdoğan, who suggested Öcalan could be granted parole if the PKK renounces violence. The PKK has emphasized the need for a suitable political environment and legal framework for disarmament, including Öcalan's release to oversee the disbanding process. The group has been fighting since 1984, initially for a separate Kurdish state, later shifting to demands for greater autonomy. Global measles cases have surged, with an estimated 10.3 million infections and 107,500 deaths reported in 2023. Major outbreaks occurred in 57 countries, with the Democratic Republic of Congo reporting the highest number at 311,500 cases. The COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to declining vaccination rates worldwide, pushing many regions below the 95% threshold needed to prevent outbreaks. In the United States, 93 measles cases have been reported across 8 jurisdictions this year, with a significant outbreak in West Texas resulting in over 120 cases, and the first U.S. measles death since 2015. 9 additional cases have been reported in eastern New Mexico, though these are not linked to the Texas outbreak. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a bill removing gender identity protections from the state's civil rights code, effective July 1st. This makes Iowa the first state to roll back civil rights protections for an entire protected class. Republican lawmakers fast-tracked the legislation, arguing it was necessary to prevent courts from overturning other laws restricting transgender rights in schools and sports. The new law defines sex as that observed at birth and bars transgender women from accessing women's public bathrooms, prisons, and domestic violence shelters. Hundreds protested at the Iowa Capitol, with LGBTQ advocates warning the law will lead to widespread discrimination against transgender individuals. President Trump is expected to sign an executive order making English the official language of the United States. The order would rescind a Clinton-era mandate requiring federal agencies and organizations receiving federal funding to provide language assistance to non-English speakers. According to the White House, the move aims to promote unity, establish efficiency in government operations, and create a pathway for civic engagement. More than 30 states have already designated English as their official language, though similar federal legislation has repeatedly failed in Congress. Hispanic advocacy groups have expressed concern that this policy could limit access to vital information and services for non-English speakers. Hamas says there has been no progress on the second phase of ceasefire talks with Israel, as the first phase is set to expire on March 1st. The initial agreement, brokered by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, included the release of 33 hostages in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. The second phase aims to secure the release of dozens of remaining hostages and potentially end the war in Gaza. Hamas has rejected an Israeli proposal to extend the first phase by 42 days, insisting on moving directly to the second phase. The conflict, which began with Hamas's October 7th attack that killed over 1,200 Israelis, has resulted in more than 48,000 Palestinian deaths, according to Gaza health officials. In our third story today, a revolutionary new kitchen appliance is promising to transform how Americans cook, while potentially improving both public health and the environment. A California startup has developed an electric induction stove that works with standard wall outlets, potentially removing a major barrier to home electrification. Joining us to discuss this innovation is our consumer technology reporter, Ethan. Good morning, Ethan. What makes this new stove so significant?
Good morning, Grace. This is indeed a breakthrough in home cooking technology. According to reporting from the Associated Press published just yesterday, a California startup called Copper has created an induction stove that plugs into a standard 120-volt outlet, the same kind you'd use for a toaster or coffee maker. This eliminates what has traditionally been one of the biggest obstacles to switching from gas to electric cooking: expensive electrical rewiring. As Rob Jackson, an environmental scientist at Stanford University, told the AP, this technology removes one of the biggest obstacles to transitioning away from gas.
Many Americans still use gas stoves. What health concerns are driving this push toward electric alternatives?
You're right, Grace. Approximately 47 million American households currently use gas stoves, according to the Associated Press. The health concerns are significant. Gas stoves release harmful pollutants, including nitrogen dioxide and cancer-causing benzene. Research has linked these emissions to increased rates of asthma and other respiratory conditions. Stanford's Jackson, who switched to electric cooking after his own research, discovered concerning levels of indoor air pollutants from gas stoves. He told the AP that when you cook with gas, you're essentially combusting fossil fuels inside your home without proper ventilation.
Beyond health impacts, how do gas stoves affect climate change?
The climate impact is substantial. According to reporting from the Niagara Gazette, gas stoves leak methane even when they're turned off, with a climate impact comparable to emissions from about 500,000 gasoline-powered cars. That's just from leakage, when they're not even being used. In contrast, induction technology is remarkably efficient. While gas stoves typically operate at 40 to 55% efficiency, induction achieves 84 to 90% efficiency by directly heating cookware through electromagnetic induction, according to research cited by Perplexity API. This means less wasted energy and lower overall emissions.
I understand this new stove also incorporates some smart technology. How does that work?
That's one of its most innovative features, Grace. Yahoo Lifestyle reports that the copper stove contains a smart battery system that charges during off-peak hours when electricity rates are lower. This allows users to cook without incurring peak hour charges, helping to manage electricity demand and potentially reducing costs. Ed Yacker, a New York City co-op treasurer who adopted the copper stove early, called the smart battery a game changer for managing energy use in his interview with the Associated Press. He made the switch after experiencing recurring gas leaks in his building.
What about the cost? Are these new stoves affordable for the average consumer?
That's still a hurdle, Grace. According to the Associated Press, Yacker purchased his copper stove for $6,000, though that was reduced to $4,200 after applying a federal tax credit. However, there are signs prices may come down with scale. The company has secured a deal with the New York City Housing Authority to supply 10,000 stoves at $3,200 each, with delivery beginning in 2026, about a year from now. Current federal incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act allow homeowners to claim up to 30% of the cost, with a specific limit of $840 for stoves and ranges. Additional state-level rebates may be available. For instance, Healdsburg, California offers a $500 rebate for replacing gas stoves with induction models.
Has there been any real-world testing of these stoves yet?
Yes, there has. The Associated Press reports that Eden Housing, a nonprofit affordable housing developer, has already retrofitted a building in California with copper stoves. Resident reactions have been mixed. Some tenants, like Jolene Cardoza, appreciate the stove's cleanliness and health benefits, while others have found the transition challenging. One resident, Monica Moore, told the AP she misses cooking with a flame and has found that some of her favorite recipes don't turn out quite the same. There's also the issue of cookware compatibility, and not all pots and pans work with induction technology.
What's the outlook for this technology moving forward?
According to the Niagara Gazette, Copper plans to produce 10,000 stoves this year and expand production in 2026. The climate benefits will vary depending on regional electricity sources, as areas with cleaner electrical grids powered by renewable energy will see greater environmental advantages. Yes. As Stanford's Jackson emphasized to the Associated Press, electrifying our homes is one of the most impactful steps individuals can take to reduce their personal greenhouse gas emissions. And technologies like the copper stove are making that transition more accessible.
Fascinating development in home technology. Thank you, Ethan, for bringing us this report. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Flash 2.0, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.